The Valtharian Imperial fleet moved slowly through empty space, searching for anything valuable they could claim. Admiral Corex sat in his command chair, bored out of his mind. Another routine patrol in the outer rim, where nothing ever happened. "Sir, we've got something," called scanner technician Veltar, his voice suddenly excited. "Unknown vessel, approximately 2 kilometers off our starboard side." Corex perked up. Finally, something interesting. On screen, what appeared on the main display made everyone go quiet. The ship floating in space looked like someone had taken a junkyard and somehow made it fly. Different colored metal patches covered the hull like a crazy quilt. Some sections gleamed like new, others looked ancient and battle-scarred. Strange tubes and pipes stuck out at odd angles, connected by what honestly looked like giant rolls of tape. "What in the galaxy is that thing?" whispered Communications Officer Zexhal. "It appears to be a vessel of unknown origin," Veltar reported, trying to sound professional despite his confusion. "But, sir, the readings are weird." "Define weird," Corex ordered. "The hull shows at least 15 different metal compositions. Some of these materials shouldn't even be able to touch each other without exploding. And that's not the strangest part." Corex raised an eyebrow. "Continue." "The energy signatures are all over the place. I'm detecting Thrakari power cells, Zelthian fusion cores, and something that might be Krex technology, all running at the same time. That should be impossible." Chief Engineer Thexnal spoke up from his station. "Admiral, those systems are completely incompatible. It's like trying to mix fire and ice. The ship should have torn itself apart the moment they turned it on. Yet there it sits," Corex said thoughtfully. "Any signs of life?" "Hard to tell with all the interference, but I think so. Very faint signatures, maybe 3 or 4 beings." Inside, the strange ship. Captain Hyun slowly opened his eyes as soft chimes filled the air. He'd been in his meditation pod, the human equivalent of a really good nap, after a long day of dealing with broken equipment and cosmic bureaucracy. "Captain, we've got visitors," called Engineer Minji from somewhere in the ship's depths. Sparks flew behind her words, followed by the sound of metal being welded together. Hyun stretched, grabbed his coffee mug, and shuffled to the bridge in his worn jumpsuit. Through the main viewport he could see massive ships surrounding them, sleek, shiny vessels that screamed military and authority. "Well, that's new," he said calmly, taking a sip of coffee. "June, you awake?" Pilot June's voice came from the cockpit. "Yeah, been watching them for about 10 minutes. They've been scanning us pretty hard. Should I be worried?" "Nah," Hyun replied. "Probably just curious. Can't blame them. Our ship does look a bit unique." That was putting it mildly. The UES Stubborn Mule was the result of 3 years of creative, problem-solving, limited budgets, and the human philosophy of if it works, don't question it. Every repair had been done with whatever materials they could find, trade for, or occasionally borrow without asking. "Minji, what are you working on back there?" Hyun called. "Just connecting this Thrakari plasma regulator to our coffee maker," she replied cheerfully. "Figured out how to boost our power output by routing it through the brewing system." Hyun nodded as if this made perfect sense. In human engineering, it actually did. Chief Engineer Thexnal stared at his instruments in complete confusion. He'd been working with alien technology for over 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The readings from the strange ship made absolutely no sense. "Run the scan again," he told his assistant. "Sir, I've already run it 5 times. The results are the same." Thexnal rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. "The power readings are jumping from 0 to levels that should vaporize the entire ship, then back to nothing, all within seconds. But the hull integrity stays perfect. This violates every law of physics I know." Admiral Corex walked over to the engineering station. "What exactly are we looking at, Thexnal?" "Chaos, sir. Pure technological chaos. Look at this." He pointed to his screen. "They have a Zelthian antimatter core connected directly to a Krex solar collector. Those 2 systems use completely different energy frequencies. Putting them together should create a feedback loop that would blow up half the sector. But it's not blowing up," Corex observed. "No, sir, it's not. In fact, it seems to be working better than either system should work alone. And that's just the beginning." Thexnal pulled up more data. "They've got Valtharian shield generators powered by what looks like, I can't even identify it. My computer keeps saying it's some kind of organic compound. Meanwhile, aboard the human ship, engineer Minji was having the time of her life. She stood knee-deep in a mess of cables, tools, and spare parts, welding something that definitely wasn't in any manual. "Hand me that wrench," she called to June, who was watching from the doorway. "Which one? You've got about 30 scattered around here. The blue one with the rubber grip. I need to tighten this connection before I hook up the new power relay." June looked at what she was working on and shook his head. "Minji, please tell me you're not connecting our life support to that thing you salvaged from the Krex trading post." "Okay, I'm not connecting our life support to the Krex atmospheric processor," she said with a grin that meant she absolutely was. "That's terrifying." "That's engineering," she corrected. "Besides, it'll give us fresher air and boost our oxygen efficiency by 30%. Win-win." Captain Hyun walked in, still carrying his coffee. "How's it going back here?" "Great. I'm just finishing up the connection between our main power grid and that Thrakari energy cell we picked up last month, the one that came with 17 warning labels in different languages." "That's the one. Turns out if you run it through our coffee maker's heating element first, it actually stabilizes the output." "Who knew?" Hyun nodded like this was perfectly normal. "Any side effects?" "Well, our coffee tastes a bit like ozone now, but the ship runs smoother than ever." Back on the Imperial flagship, Tactical Officer Nexra was having her own crisis. "Sir, their weapons systems are... I don't know what they are." "Explain," Corex demanded. "Well, they appear to have mounted mining equipment where their main guns should be, and what looks like farming tools as secondary weapons, but the energy readings suggest they're somehow more powerful than our regulation plasma cannons." "That's impossible." "Yes, sir, it should be, but my instruments don't lie." Thexnall looked up from his console. "Admiral, I've been thinking, what if they don't follow our technological rules because they never learned them?" "What do you mean?" "Every species in the galaxy learns certain fundamental principles before they develop advanced technology. Things like energy compatibility, material limitations, safety protocols. What if this species just ignored all that and made things work anyway?" The bridge fell silent as everyone considered this terrifying possibility. The human ship suddenly came alive, like someone had flipped a giant switch. Lights blazed across its patched hull, and the chaotic energy readings that had been driving the Imperial engineers crazy somehow smoothed out into something that worked perfectly, even if it shouldn't. Captain Hyun's voice crackled through the comm system, friendly and relaxed like he was talking to neighbors over a fence. "Well, hello there, folks. This is Captain Hyun aboard the UES Stubborn Mule. You all seem pretty interested in our little ship. Something we can help you with." Admiral Corex stared at his tactical display in growing horror. The human vessel's weapon systems were lighting up, but they weren't weapons at all. His computer was identifying mining lasers, construction equipment, and something it kept labeling as agricultural implement, unknown purpose. "Sir," whispered Tactical Officer Nexra, her voice shaking slightly, "they've got what appears to be a food processor mounted where their main particle beam should be." "A food processor, sir. You know, for chopping vegetables. But it's giving off energy readings that match our heaviest cannons." On the human ship, Pilot June glanced at the massive fleet surrounding them and yawned. "Hey, Minji, remember when you said this job would be nice and quiet?" "I never said quiet," Minji's voice echoed from the engineering section, accompanied by the sound of power tools. "I said it would be interesting, and look, I was right." "What are you working on now?" Hyun asked, settling into his captain's chair. "With his coffee. Just hooking up that garden hose we picked up on Station 7 to our main cannon. Turns out it makes an excellent coolant system." June looked concerned. "Please tell me that's not the same hose we use for washing the ship." "Okay, it's not the same hose," Minji replied cheerfully. "But it is, isn't it?" "Maybe." Admiral Corex tried to establish proper diplomatic contact, his voice stern and official. "Unknown vessel, I am Admiral Corex of the Valtharian Imperial Fleet. You are currently in violation of Imperial space regulations. You will submit to immediate inspection and prepare for taxation assessment according to Galactic Code 774. There was a pause, then Captain Hyun's laughter filled the comm channel. "Taxation? Friend, we don't even know who you are yet. How about we start with the basics? I'm Hyun. That's Minji making all the noise with the welding torch, and June's our pilot. He's the one who somehow keeps this bucket of bolts flying straight. I am Admiral Corex of the mighty Valtharian Empire. You will comply with Imperial law immediately. Valtharian Empire, Hyun repeated thoughtfully. Nope, never heard of it. We're from Earth, by the way. Nice to meet you all. Chief Engineer. Thexnell's voice cracked as he spoke. Sir, they're using a beverage dispenser as their targeting computer. What? The coffee maker, sir. It appears to be integrated into their weapons control system. Admiral Corex felt a headache coming on. How is that even possible? Unknown, sir, but it's working with 98% accuracy. Meanwhile, Minji had poked her head into the bridge area, still holding a welding torch. Hyun, I've got that new cannon almost ready. Just need to calibrate it with the coffee maker's brewing cycle. The what? Well, I figured out that our targeting gets more accurate when the coffee is brewing. Something about the electromagnetic interference patterns, so I synchronized the whole system. June turned around in his pilot's seat. Does this mean we can't shoot and make coffee at the same time? Actually, we have to make coffee to shoot accurately. That's the most human thing I've ever heard, Hyun said proudly. Admiral Corex listened to this conversation in growing disbelief. These beings were treating advanced military technology like a hobby project, and somehow it was working better than systems that had taken his empire centuries to perfect. Sir, Nexra reported quietly, their improvised weapons are showing higher efficiency ratings than our standard arsenal. Corex closed his eyes. This was going to be a very long day. Admiral Corex decided to try a different approach. Maybe these strange beings just didn't understand how things worked in civilized space. He straightened his uniform and spoke in his most official voice. Listen carefully. Unknown species. I'm Admiral Corex, representing the full authority of the Valtharian Empire. You have entered our territory without permission. According to Galactic Law Section 12, all vessels must submit to inspection and pay appropriate taxes before proceeding. Captain Hyun's response was so casual it made Corex's eye twitch. Well, Admiral Corex, that sounds like quite a system you've got there. But here's the thing. We're just passing through. Didn't know this was anyone's territory. No signs posted or anything. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. What law? Hyun asked genuinely. We've never heard of your empire, your laws, or your taxes. We're explorers from Earth. We go where we want, when we want, and we've never had to ask anyone's permission before. Communications Officer Zex Hal leaned toward Corex. Sir, our databases show no record of this Earth or their species. That's impossible. Every inhabited world in this sector is catalogued. On the human ship, Minji's voice carried from the engineering section. Hyun, these guys seem pretty uptight. Want me to show them what our diplomatic solution looks like? What's our diplomatic solution? June asked curiously. I've been working on mounting that particle accelerator we found to our communications array. You know, just in case someone doesn't want to be friends. Hyun chuckled. Maybe hold off on that for Tao Minji. Let's see if we can talk this out first. Admiral Corex was getting frustrated. You will comply with Imperial authority. Your vessel will be boarded and searched. Any contraband or unauthorized technology will be confiscated. Contraband? Hyun sounded confused. Like what? Weapons, illegal modifications, unlicensed technology. Oh, well, in that case, you probably don't want to board our ship, Hyun said helpfully. Pretty much everything we've got would probably count as unauthorized by your standards. Chief Engineer Thexenal was monitoring their conversation while running continuous scans. Sir, they're not lying. I'm detecting technology from at least 12 different species, all modified and combined in ways that shouldn't work. They're pirates, Corex concluded. They've been raiding ships and stealing technology. Actually, Hyun's voice cut in, apparently having overheard, we usually trade for stuff. Sometimes we find things floating around after battles, and occasionally we help people fix their ships, and they give us the old parts they don't need. Anymore. You fix other people's ships? Nexra asked before she could stop herself. Sure, we're pretty good at making broken things work again. Last month we helped this Krex merchant whose engines died, got him running with some spare parts and a really long extension cord. An extension cord? Well, technically it was power conduit. We found in an asteroid field, but same principle. Minji's voice chimed in again. Yun, I've got that new cannon ready to test. Want to see if it works? What's it made from? June asked. Remember that broken food synthesizer from the space station? I combined it with some mining equipment and that decorative lamp from your quarters. My lamp? I like that lamp. It's still a lamp. It just also shoots coherent energy beams now. Multifunctional furniture. Admiral Corex listened to this conversation with growing alarm. Did she just say she turned household items into weapons? It appears so, sir. Thexnal. Confirmed. And based on these readings, it's incredibly effective. Corex tried one more time. This is your final warning. Submit to Imperial authority or face the consequences. Captain Hyun's voice remained cheerfully unconcerned. You know what, Admiral? How about we skip all this formal stuff and just be neighbors? We're not looking for trouble. We're just trying to get home with some interesting souvenirs and maybe some good stories. This is not a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation if you're friendly enough about it, Hyun replied. Minji, go ahead and test that cannon. Just aim it away from the nice ships. The sound of charging energy filled the comm channel, followed by what could only be described as the universe's most cheerful weapons test. Admiral Corex had reached his breaking point. These humans were either completely insane or playing some kind of elaborate game, and either way, they were making him look foolish in front of his entire fleet. All ships, target the unknown vessel, he commanded. Fire warning shots. Maybe they'll understand force better than diplomacy. The Imperial fleet opened fire with their standard plasma batteries, bright blue beams designed to disable rather than destroy. It was a show of power meant to intimidate primitive species into submission. The human response was unlike anything in Corex's military experience. Incoming fire, June called out cheerfully from the pilot's seat. Looks like they're trying to tickle us with their fancy light show. How rude, Captain Hyun said, finishing his coffee. Minji, I think it's time to show them what human hospitality looks like when someone shoots at us first. On it? Minji's voice was filled with the kind of excitement that made experienced soldiers nervous. Launching defensive response in 3, 2... What came out of the human ship made the Imperial tactical computers crash trying to classify it. A modified mining charge flew past the flagship, followed by what appeared to be a farming plow spinning end over end, and something that the scanners kept insisting was a household washing machine. Evasive maneuvers, Nexra shouted as the washing machine somehow locked onto their position. It's a laundry appliance, Corex yelled. How is it tracking us? The washing machine struck their port shields and somehow began draining their power while simultaneously cleaning their hull. Within seconds, that section of the ship was sparkling clean and completely powerless. Sir, our port weapons array is offline, reported a bewildered technician, but it's never been cleaner. On the human ship, June was having the time of his life, making their patched-together vessel dance between Imperial plasma beams like it was built for this. The ship shouldn't have been able to move that gracefully, but human engineering had never cared much about what things should do. Nice flying, Minji called out. I'm launching the agricultural package now. A modified harvesting combine flew toward the Imperial cruiser Determination, its rotating blades somehow supercharged with energy. It latched onto the ship's hull and began systematically dismantling their outer armor plating, sorting the useful bits from the scrap. They're harvesting our ship, the cruiser's captain reported in panic. Harvesting, Corex repeated weakly. Like wheat, sir. They're cutting off pieces and organizing them by quality. Meanwhile, the human ship was doing something that violated every known law of space combat. Instead of retreating after each attack, they were getting closer to the Imperial vessels and literally collecting the debris from their own strikes. Hyun, Minji's voice was filled with delight. Their armor plating is really good quality. Mind if I grab some for our next upgrade? Go for it, Hyun replied. Waste not, want not. Are they looting us during the battle? Thexnal asked in horrified fascination. It appears so, sir. They're taking our damaged components and somehow integrating them into their ship in real time. Cook Sujin's voice joined the conversation from the galley. Captain, I've got the food synthesizer ready. To go. What do you want me to launch at them? What are our options? Hyun asked. Well, I've got yesterday's soup, some of those hard dinner rolls from last week, and I just finished a batch of kimchi that's been fermenting for months. The kimchi sounds perfect. Make sure it's extra spicy. Moments later, what appeared to be weaponized fermented vegetables began peppering the Imperial formation. The kimchi containers burst against shields, creating clouds of aromatic gas that somehow interfered with their sensor arrays, while making everyone's eyes water. Sir, we can't see anything, reported scanner technician Veltar between coughs. Whatever they're shooting at us smells terrible, and it's jamming our equipment. It's lunch, Hyun's voice came through the comm, still perfectly calm. Really good lunch, actually. You guys should try Korean food sometime. Admiral Corex watched in growing horror as his disciplined fleet began falling apart under an assault of household appliances, farming equipment, and dinner. His ships were being outfought by beings who treated warfare like a creative hobby project. Sir, Nexra reported quietly, their tactics are working. We're losing this fight to kitchen supplies and gardening tools. Corex closed his eyes and wondered what he'd done to deserve this assignment. The battle was getting more intense, but the humans were treating it like the most interesting puzzle they'd encountered all week. While the Imperial fleet fired their weapons with military precision and growing desperation, the crew of the Stubborn Mule was having what could only be described as aggressive fun. June, can you swing us around that big ship? Captain Hyun asked casually, like he was asking for directions to the nearest gas station. Sure thing, June replied, making their ship spiral between two Imperial cruisers in a move that should have been impossible for something held together with determination and kitchen utensils. Want me to get close enough for Minji to grab some of their antenna arrays? Only if she can use them for something useful. From the engineering section came Minji's delighted voice. Oh, I can definitely use those. I've been wanting to upgrade our communication system, and their stuff looks really shiny. Cook Sujin had fully committed to what she was calling combat cooking. She'd somehow turned the food replicator into a kinetic bombardment system that launched perfectly prepared meals at incredible velocities. Captain, I'm launching the Tuesday special at their flagship, she announced cheerfully. What's the Tuesday special? Hyun asked. Beef stew with extra vegetables, really thick consistency, perfect for clogging up their air intakes. A container of what smelled like absolutely delicious stew splattered across the Imperial flagship's main air recycling system. Within minutes, the entire bridge crew was distracted by the amazing smell, while their life support systems struggled with chunks of carrot and potato. Sir, reported a very confused technician, our air smells incredible, but we're getting contamination warnings from beef and onions. Admiral Corex was beyond bewildered. They're attacking us with dinner. The ship's AI, Bobby, had been quietly observing the battle and decided to offer helpful suggestions. His cheerful electronic voice filled the human ship's bridge. Captain, I've analyzed the enemy formation and calculated 17 ways to improve our offensive capabilities using common household items. Would you like me to implement the toilet paper solution? The what now? June asked. I've determined that our emergency toilet paper supply, when properly deployed, can create an effective sensor jamming field while simultaneously providing psychological warfare benefits. Do it, Hyun said without hesitation. Moments later, streams of toilet paper began flowing from the human ship like party streamers, wrapping around Imperial vessels and somehow interfering with their targeting systems while making the entire battle look like the galaxy's strangest celebration. Sir, we can't get a weapons lock, Nexra reported in defeat. There's toilet paper covering our sensor arrays, and every time we try to burn it off, more appears. Engineer Minji had moved on to her next project, which involved connecting a Valtharian shield generator to what appeared to be a children's toy robot. Hey Hyun, remember that little dancing robot we picked up at that space station gift shop? The one that plays music? That's the one. I figured out how to make it control our defensive systems. Now our shields dance to the beat. As if to demonstrate, the human ship's energy shields began pulsing and shifting in rhythm to what sounded like upbeat dance music, somehow making them more effective at deflecting Imperial weapons fire. Their defenses are dancing, Thexnell reported weakly. And it's working better than our targeting computers predicted, added Nexra. Pilot June glanced at his console, where his daughter's remote control car was somehow integrated into the navigation system. You know, I brought this along so I'd have something to remind me of home. Never thought it would help me outfly a military fleet. Everything has potential, Minji called back, now working on what appeared to be turning a potted plant into some kind of sensor array. This little cactus is going to make an excellent early warning system. Captain Hyun surveyed the chaos around them, Imperial ships covered in toilet paper and food, their own vessels somehow performing better than it ever had, and his crew treating the whole situation like a fun weekend project. You know what, team? He said with a grin. I think we're starting to get the hang of this space travel thing. Admiral Corex's hands were shaking as he opened a direct channel to Imperial High Command. This was going to be the most embarrassing report of his entire military career, but he had no choice. His fleet was being systematically defeated by what appeared to be a flying junkyard operated by lunatics. High Command, this is Admiral Corex requesting immediate backup and tactical consultation. The stern voice of Grand Admiral Vexthon came through the comm, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. Corex, you're dealing with a single primitive vessel. What could you possibly need help with? Sir, they're not primitive. They're something else entirely. They're using 17 different FTL systems at the same time. Their weapons are made from kitchen appliances, and they just disabled 3 of my cruisers with what I think was lunch. There was a long pause. Corex, are you feeling well? Perhaps I'm sending you the tactical data now, sir. Please review it immediately. On the human ship, Captain Hyun was sipping a fresh cup of coffee while watching the Imperial fleet struggle with toilet paper and beef stew. Bobby, how are we doing? On power? Excellent, Captain. The coffee maker is running at optimal efficiency, which means our weapon systems are performing above expected parameters. Also, the toilet paper deployment has improved our aerodynamics by 12%. How does toilet paper improve aerodynamics in space? Joan asked while making their ship perform what could only be described as a victory dance around a disabled Imperial destroyer. I have no idea, Bobby replied cheerfully, but the math works out perfectly. Engineer Minji had moved on to her latest project, which involved turning the ship's waste disposal system into what she called a tactical refuse launcher. Hyun, I've got our garbage shooter ready to go. Want to see what happens when I launch last week's recycling at them? What kind of recycling? Oh, the usual. Empty food containers, some old spare parts, that broken tablet from your quarters, and about 50 coffee cups. Launch away. Back on the Imperial flagship, Grand Admiral Vexthon was staring at the tactical data in complete disbelief. This is impossible. No ship can run multiple incompatible FTL drives simultaneously. The power feedback alone would— That's what I said, sir, Corex interrupted. But there it is, working perfectly, and now they're shooting garbage at us. Garbage? Coffee cups, sir, empty ones. But somehow they're penetrating our shields and sticking to our hull. Our exterior sensors are being blocked by trash. A junior officer on the bridge spoke up nervously. Sir, long-range sensors are confirming Admiral Corex's report. The unknown vessel is indeed operating with multiple contradictory technologies, and their success rate against our fleet is unprecedented. Grand Admiral Vexthon sat down heavily. Get me the Technology Assessment Division immediately. Meanwhile, the crew of the Stubborn Mule was settling into a comfortable rhythm. Cook Sujin had discovered that her soup launcher worked even better when she added extra spices, creating clouds of aromatic interference that made the Imperial crews homesick and confused. Captain, she called out happily, I'm launching the kimchi surprise now, extra fermented just the way my grandmother made it. What's the surprise? Hyun asked. I added some of those energy crystals we picked up last month. They should make it really sparkly when it hits their shields. The fermented vegetables struck the Imperial formation like the world's strangest fireworks display, creating beautiful light shows while simultaneously jamming communications and making everyone within 50 kilometers very hungry. Sir, Communications Officer Zexhal reported weakly, we're receiving transmission requests from 17 different ships asking for the recipe. Admiral Corex buried his face in his hands. They want the recipe for the weapon that's attacking. Them? It appears so, sir. Also, 3 ships have requested permission to surrender specifically so they can try the food. On the human ship, Pilot June was reviewing their tactical situation, while his daughter's toy car continued to provide surprisingly accurate navigation data. "You know, I think we're actually winning this fight." "Of course we are," Minji replied. "Now somehow using a houseplant as a sensor array. We're using superior technology. Superior technology. We're held together with tape and good intentions." "Exactly. No artificial limitations, no bureaucratic safety regulations, just pure creative problem-solving." Captain Hyun nodded sagely. "Sometimes the best solution is the one nobody expects." What started as a simple skirmish in the Outer Rim had somehow become the most watched live broadcast in galactic history. News networks across 17 different star systems were covering the battle between the mighty Valtharian Empire and 3 humans in what looked like a flying garage sale. The Krex broadcasting network was the first to pick up the feed. Their lead anchor, a purple-scaled being with 4 eyes, was struggling to describe what everyone was seeing. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing something unprecedented. A single vessel crewed by an unknown species called humans is currently defeating an entire Imperial fleet, using what appears to be household items and leftovers." Captain Hyun had noticed the increased comm traffic and realized they had an audience. Being naturally friendly, he decided to be helpful. "Oh hey, looks like we've got some viewers," he announced over the open channels. "Since you're all watching anyway, want to see how this stuff actually works?" Before Admiral Corex could cut the transmission, Hyun was already giving an impromptu engineering lecture to half the galaxy. "See, the trick isn't thinking about why something shouldn't work," he explained cheerfully, while Minji demonstrated by connecting a Thrakari power cell to their coffee maker. "Just focus on making it work anyway. Like this little setup here. Everyone says you can't mix different energy types, but they just need a proper buffer system." "What's your buffer system?" asked a curious voice from the Zelthian Science Academy. "Coffee grounds," Minji replied proudly. "Turns out they're excellent at absorbing excess energy while adding a nice aroma to the ship." Across the galaxy, engineering departments went very quiet as their best minds tried to process this information. On the trading station Nexus 7, a group of Velthari mechanics had stopped all work to watch the broadcast. "Did she just say coffee grounds?" "I think so. And look at their power output readings. That's impossible. Coffee grounds aren't even conductive. Tell that to their power system." The humans continued their helpful demonstration. Cook Sujin had joined the conversation and was explaining her combat cooking techniques. "The secret to effective food-based weaponry is understanding your ingredients," she said, while loading another batch of fermented vegetables into what used to be their food replicator. "Dense foods work for kinetic impact, but aromatic foods are better for area denial and psychological effects." "Psychological effect?" asked a fascinated military analyst from the Corvan Defense Force. "Oh yes, nothing disrupts enemy morale like really good food they can't have. Plus the smell makes them homesick and distracted." Within hours, modification attempts were being reported across known space. The Galactic Technology Standards Bureau went into emergency session as reports flooded in of various species trying human-style engineering, with predictably chaotic results. The Andraxian shipyards reported 3 explosions and 1 accidental dimensional rift after engineers tried to power their assembly line with kitchen equipment. The rift, however, was producing an endless supply of fresh bread, so they decided to call it a success. Engineer Minji was enjoying the attention and had started taking requests from the audience. Someone asked about shield harmonics. "Oh, that's easy. You just need to sync them with music. We use this little dancing robot toy. It makes the whole defensive grid move to the beat." To demonstrate, she activated their shields, which immediately began pulsing and shifting, in time to what sounded like upbeat electronic music. "The rhythm confuses targeting computers," she explained helpfully. "Plus, it's really fun to watch." On the Imperial flagship, Tactical Officer Nexra was frantically taking notes. "Sir, their shield efficiency just increased by 40% because they're dancing." "Dancing shields," Admiral Corex repeated numbly. "We're being defeated by dancing shields powered by a children's toy." Meanwhile, Captain Hyun was fielding questions from fascinated viewers across the galaxy. How do you deal with incompatible technologies? Asked a Thrakari engineer. Easy, you just ignore the incompatibility and make them be friends anyway. Like people, sometimes the best partnerships come from completely different backgrounds. But what about safety protocols? Safety is important, Hyun agreed. That's why we always test everything with small amounts first. Like, before we connected the waste disposal to our weapon system, we made sure it wouldn't explode. Only twice, but we learned from that and added better shielding. The broadcast had become an impromptu engineering course that was revolutionizing technology across the galaxy. Universities were hastily organizing seminars on applied human engineering principles, though most professors weren't sure what they were supposed to teach. By the end of the day, 17 different species had accidentally created new forms of faster-than-light travel while trying to reproduce human modifications, and the Galactic Patent Office had closed indefinitely due to an overwhelming number of applications for impossible but working technologies. Captain Hyun looked around at the Imperial fleet, half of which was now covered in toilet paper, food, stains and various pieces of recycled garbage that had somehow become stuck to their hulls. The other half was trying to figure out why their ships smelled so good while their systems were failing. "You know what?" he said, finishing his coffee, and setting the mug down. "I'm getting kind of bored with all this shooting. How about we try something different?" "Different how?" Joan asked, still making their ship dance around the Imperial formation like it was showing off. "Well, it's almost dinner time, and we've got plenty of food. Why don't we invite these folks over for a meal? They seem stressed, and nothing fixes." "Stress like good home cooking." Cook Sujin's voice came from the galley, bright with excitement. "Oh, I'd love to cook for guests. I've got enough kimchi stew for everyone. Plus, I just finished a batch of those dumplings you like." Minji poked her head up from whatever she was working on. "Should I put away the weaponized kitchen appliances?" "Nah, leave them out. Our guests might be curious about how they work." Captain Hyun opened a channel to the Imperial fleet. "Hey, Admiral Corex, you and your crew's hungry? We're about to have dinner, and there's plenty for everyone. Consider it a peace offering." The silence that followed was so complete that several people checked if their comm systems were still working. Finally, Admiral Corex's voice came through, confused and suspicious. "You're inviting us to dinner?" "Sure. Why not? We've been shooting at each other for hours, but that doesn't mean we can't be neighborly. Besides, Sujin makes the best kimchi stew this side of Earth, and I bet you've never tried Korean food." "This is highly irregular," Corex protested weakly. "So is everything else we've done today," Hyun pointed out cheerfully. "Come on, what's the worst that could happen? You get a good meal and maybe learn something new." On the Imperial flagship, the bridge crew looked at each other in bewilderment. Chief Engineer Thexanol was the first to speak. "Sir, I have to admit, I'm curious about how they turned their food synthesizer into a weapon system from a purely technical standpoint. And their ship does smell incredible," added scanner technician Veltar. "Like someone's cooking a feast." Admiral Corex found himself seriously considering the most ridiculous diplomatic situation of his career. "They defeated our entire fleet with kitchen appliances and garbage, and now they want to serve us dinner. It does seem to be their way of doing things, sir," Nexra observed. "Unconventional but effective. Against every regulation in the Imperial Handbook, Admiral Corex heard himself saying, 'Very well. We'll send a small diplomatic party to assess the situation.'" 20 minutes later, a shuttle full of very nervous Imperial officers was docking with the human ship. They were met at the airlock by Captain Hyun, still wearing his casual jumpsuit and holding a cup of coffee, like this was the most normal thing in the galaxy. "Welcome aboard the Stubborn Mule," he said warmly. "Don't mind the mess, we're still working on some upgrades." The Imperial officers stepped into what could only be described as organized chaos. Cables and spare parts were everywhere, but they were all neatly arranged and clearly labeled. Strange smells filled the air, some from cooking, others from whatever Minji was welding in the corner. Is that a washing machine connected to your main power grid?" Thexanol asked in fascination. "Oh yeah," Hyun replied casually. "Minji figured out it makes an excellent power regulator. Plus, Our clothes are always clean. Engineer Minji looked up from her latest project and waved cheerfully. Hi there. Want to see how I turn this old toaster into a particle beam emitter? It's really simple once you understand the basic principles. The basic principles of what? Thexnell asked, genuinely curious despite himself. Creative problem solving. See, most people get caught up in what things are supposed to do instead of thinking about what they could do with a little imagination. Cook Sujin appeared with a tray of samples. Try this, it's kimchi stew with a little twist. I added some of those energy crystals we found last week. They don't change the taste, but they make it glow slightly. The Imperial officers found themselves sitting around a table that appeared to be made from salvaged ship parts, eating genuinely delicious food, while the humans cheerfully explained their various modifications and improvements. So you're telling me, Admiral Korex said slowly, that you built this entire ship by just trying things until they worked? Pretty much, Hyun confirmed. We started with a basic transport vessel and kept adding things we found useful. Every time something broke, we fixed it with whatever we had available. But how do you know it's safe? We test everything carefully, Minji assured him. Well, mostly carefully. That one time with the gravity generator was admittedly a bit risky. By the end of the evening, Admiral Korex found himself filing the strangest report in Imperial history, recommending immediate establishment of mutually beneficial relations with humanity while quietly requesting a transfer to the furthest possible edge of the galaxy. His transfer request was denied. High Command wanted him to serve as permanent liaison to these terrifyingly friendly humans who had accidentally revolutionized galactic technology with coffee grounds and determination. Thishimmer. Galaxy would never be the same, and somehow that